Heyo, my Planet Coaster friends, Johnny5 Alive here, and welcome back to another episode of Project PlanCo. We are doing something different here today. As you can see, we're over in the West, Ellie's Frontier, the West World. Just wanted to start things off by explaining what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be doing a speed build, and I'm going to explain here why. I'm in a bit of a difficult position here. This was the High Noon build for the High Noon coaster created by Zafor. So this was built by Kiara. Doesn't have an alignment cube either. When I first looked at it, I know all these boards are animated, and when I place it down, they will stop, but this isn't the reason why I'm rebuilding it, but part of me... Oh God, the building looks like it's haunted. Poor Zafor's soul's trying to escape this building. There's something about it that doesn't sit right with me. The build itself is a little bit under PlanCofied, in my opinion. No offense to Kiara, like, it's still a pretty strong build overall, but Kiara did message me saying that she was struggling with the build, that she'd given up on it, and then I said to her, hey, pass it over to me, I will do it myself. And then she's like, no, I'll give it another try. So this is her second attempt at the building, which the first they were unhappy about. So with that being said, I was already in the position prepared to take over, and I was under the impression that they were not completely 100% happy with their build. So after doing it a second time, I figured we would take a look at it, and both Batch and I were in agreements that it was a little bit underwhelming in terms of plankification for such an important build, that being High Noon. So I have a plot here. I kind of deleted it, but I had like a little plot here, and it was a tiny plot. It was like a 50-piece plot or something. It's the only plot that I've gotten in the park since we did the city, where I did my Club 5. I was really hoping to get a plot, but they were all taken out, and I wanted to make sure everyone was having fun. So the fact that Kiara was struggling a little bit, we had some talks about it, and we felt that the build was a little bit underwhelming in terms of plankification. It doesn't really scream High Noon. It doesn't really scream Zafor. This is Zafor's very last coaster that they ever made. Not that this is a bad build. It's just, it's a good, like, Western, barn style build. It's definitely got this barn vibe about it. It's got the hay in there. It's got the stalls for all the animals. The interior is actually pretty nice. I actually really like the interior. But it does give me like big barn vibes, not really High Noon vibes. But like, what is High Noon, right? Like, and that's the thought process I was going through. I was like looking at this and I go like, well, Ellie's got a shootout. You go at High Noon in the middle of the town to have a shootout, to have a draw. But how do you depict that? How do you depict that into a station that's called High Noon, right? And so I had some thinking over it, and I thought to myself, can I do a concept revolving around 1, Zafor, 2, High Noon, and 3, plankification with Miss Ellie, Dexar, because Dexar was Zafor's character. And can I incorporate my little plot into all of it? I had a little plot here that connected there. And can I tie it all together to create this, a plankified, a Zaforfied station to do his justice to his High Noon coaster? My heart still wanted to do something for this station because I had a plot here. So I went to the drawing board and I started thinking to myself, what kind of ideas can I come up with to plankify this, to make this something different? We're going to go into a speed build from here of me going through my thought process, me building my build. And again, this is no offense to Kiara. Kiara did a great job on this build. They tried twice. They struggled with it. Sometimes when you struggle with things and you got to go again and again and you're just not in it and you're just not feeling it, sometimes it doesn't hurt to pass it over. Right? It feels bad for me because it's not being passed over. I offered for it to be passed over, but I'm sort of just taking over. And that's where I feel a little bit guilty. But at the end of the day, this is Zafor's final coaster that they ever made. And Zafor was my personal best friend. And I just wanted to do something, take the time to do something that can commemorate Zafor, that I can say that it's my final gift to Zafor. Zafor's coaster is his final gift to us, and I want to tie it together and give my final gift to him. And I think that alone made me want to give this a shot. And I figured if it doesn't turn out and I don't like it, we'll go back to our backup plan, or our original plan, I should say. So again, this is not like a competition. This is not trying to like one up this build or anything like that. This is not me trying to step on KR's toes. I just want to make that very clear. This is purely, I wanted to do something special to make High Noon special for a very special person in my life and all of your lives, and have something in our park that I built that commemorates both Zaphor and us two being best friends. So that all being explained, long-winded introduction, I know. Let's jump over to the speed build. All right, let's get right on into it. So I'm watching this on Premiere, and it's not pre-rendered, so it like freezes up and it's hard for me. What you guys are seeing real time is like 2 frames a second for me right now. It's awful. But that's because it's not pre-rendered. Some of this is like 20 times speed for what I'm doing here. And we'll go to like 12 times speed, and then also 8 times speed when I'm like actually getting into the nitty and gritty and building. So I wanted to, I think a total of like 9 hours of footage here. And I've sped it up at all different rates to get the video down to about 40 something minutes. Plus my intro and the end B-roll. So I try to get it all under an hour-long video for you guys. And that way I don't have to do this in two parts. I could just get it all done in one shebang. But it did take me all day to make this build. And it took up a lot of time. And because of that, I wasn't able to do a bunch of videos. But this was kind of holding up the western area, and I wanted to do something about it. So we're getting it done. So what you see me doing here, let me talk you through it. I had a concept like High Noon. What is High Noon? And then I thought of the old spaghetti westerns, the classic shot of the guy between the legs, and you see the villain between the legs on the other side. And they're having a shootout at high noon. And I thought, maybe, just maybe, if I built a silhouette, I could actually have Miss Ellie between the legs. So it's a shootout between this character, which we can maybe imagine is Zaphor, and Ellie on the other side. Zaphor versus Ellie. I'm using the smoke pipes to do the fingers because I didn't have a basic shape small enough. It kind of turned out, but I'm still indifferent about it. In fact, I feel like I could probably remove the hand entirely, but we'll see. I mean, you'll see what I do later, and the way it ties together, it's probably okay. But I used a like a 1 meter or 1 tile piece of paper or sheet screen, I guess, and put a picture on it, and then another one, and put half a picture on it. So it's about 1.5 doorways high. That's the size. And I needed it to be big enough for me to use basic shapes, right? To trace that image out. So that was one of my concepts, was the silhouette of the legs. Let's see if we can build that element and figure out how to use that. Well, it's not a Zaphor boarding station without a Kirby, right? Zaphore's Discord icon and his beloved character was always Kirby. So I decided to make a little cowboy Kirby, and I was trying to do like the suck mouth, the vacuum mouth, if you will. And it just wasn't working because it was protruding out. So I ended up just going with a little smiley face in the end. I wanted to do the wings because chance drawing there of the Kirby with the wings. I wanted to do that. The bat wings definitely didn't work. So I found those blue neon wings. Give them a little cowboy hat, a little cowboy gun, posed them a little bit. And I figured I would use that somewhere on the station. And then I'm just building out all these elements, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with them. And that's kind of the problem. I should have had a plan. And then I thought, like, okay, what's another element that I could add to this? And I thought just, like, Zaphore's kind of thing was, like, howdy folks. And I felt like it would be kind of a cool, symbolic thing to have a cowboy tipping their hat. Almost like Zaphor tipping his hat to us, howdy folks. and it's just a cool silhouette, and I feel like it ties together with the noon shootout. You get the high noon legs shootout thing going on, and then somewhere I can use this element to tip the hat to Zaphor, to commemorate Zaphor a little bit. We're going to tip our hat to him, or maybe him tip his hat to us. Whichever way you want to look at it, the symbology is there, and it's very Western. So I thought, hey, I could use that. Just so happens it fit perfectly with the legs, as if like the top fits the bottom in terms of size and shape. And I figured I might be able to like join them together in some way. So you see his legs and you also see his top, and put something in between, like the high noon font. And that's kind of the concept I was going with. Previously going into this, all I had was the legs in front of this the exit. So I didn't really know, like I figured, okay, the legs should be big enough as a doorway, I guess. And it'll work as a doorway. And then I was thinking, like, do I really want the building to come right to the edge of the boarding station? And this is where I was like, okay, I got my elements. And here as I'm trying like the Miss Ellie between the legs, and you can see like a little shootout there, just like the picture. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. So that's a cool concept, right? And it's like, well, concepts are cool. Concepts are concepts, but they don't really work until you put them into practice. So I was like, well, what do I do with this? And do I put the building right up to the front? But then, based off some of my critiques about the last build, I felt like it was too boxy, it was too big, and there wasn't enough undulation, and there's enough stuff. So I'm in this predicament right now going like, well, I can't use the high noon letters that Batch made just the way they are, because the way the shadows are, if I rearrange high and noon. I could stack them, but then the shadows won't make sense. So I'll get rid of the shadows, and then I can actually stack them on top of each other or put them side by side, and I have wiggle room to use this font and kind of place it somewhere on the building. But, you know, it's still a concept at this point. And you can see, like, the guy almost fits together, like the top and the bottom. And I was like, hey, that's kind of cool, but what do I do with it? It's very, very tall. And yeah, I was like, I could put it off to the side and try to create some separation. But like this, it's a big building, and it's going to be tough to conceptualize something. And second part of that is I've never really made a Western building. I mean, I never have made a Western building. I haven't even attempted to. So I didn't even really know what the pieces were. And that's why you see off in the middle of the map, there's all these pieces scattered about. And I was just kind of like seeing what's in the Western pack off screen, off recording, so that I could get an understanding of like what kind of shapes. I also took a look around at like Chant's new build that's going to go into the next episode. I looked at Batch's builds. I looked at everybody's Western builds. Everybody's using different pieces of wood. Everybody's using different styles. So I was just kind of like seeing like, how do I even make Western? So I need to start with the shape. I need to start with the front of the building. And what kind of like curvatures do I want? I don't want just a slanted roof. A lot of Western builds actually have flat roofs with peaky fronts. They have these like tall facade style fronts and kind of flat roofs. So I was like, okay, like I could go with something like this and then have like the top part, the facade part of the character up top, the legs down below, and then bring other elements in later to tie it together. So what I'm starting over here is a big tower, because the coaster goes from the bottom right to the top left. It's a lift, right? So I don't want like a symmetrical build. I want something that has a lot of heaviness or height on the left, and you know, some stuff behind it, and then, you know, try to make a composition about that. I want some different layers. So that was me like fiddling around with the tower, and at this point, like, I'm not committed to anything. And the pieces even that I'm using, I knew I wanted to go with the painted wood, because I want to be able to recolor this and give it some pop. I wanted to bring some color to it because that was one of my critiques of the first build. And this being a Project PlanCo park, we have a lot of vibrant characters, a lot of vibrant colors. And, you know, we had the Miss Ellie's draw on the one side with the big reds and vibrant colors. So I want to try to match some of the colorful things around and draw some attention to this boarding station, because the environment and a lot of the builds that we have around, like the standard builds, the blueprints, they're just wood. They're just Western wood. There's a lot of monotone and, you know. So to change my train of thought here, I got to give a shout out to Purple Skin. Purple Skin made this airship. I knew I wanted an airship because we have this whole thing of Zaphor flying away on his Kirby balloon, and he's kind of sailing off into the afterlife, right? So I was like, how can I symbolize that? And I thought a good way to do that would be a steampunk ship. This ship was made by Rohana. So I'll give them credit with a little builder sign, because the ship, none of the, I wanted to download an airship, but I didn't want to just take one unless it was absolutely perfect. And neither of the ships really served my needs. So I took the balloon from Rohana's and the ship from Purple Skin, and I combined them together and then modified it from there. So, because I wanted the ship to match the balloon in size, and that platform underneath is a 2x4 tile, and that is the exact height of my roof. And by having this big balloon, this big airship, I could create depth in my composition, so behind the building. And I thought maybe I could put Kirby on the ship, because I wanted to use the Kirby somewhere, but do I want to use it on the ship? I'm unsure. I tried it out and I was like, oh, it fits. So I'll come back to that idea later, right? So maybe if I can't figure out a good spot for Kirby, I'll put Kirby on the airship because it's Zaphor sailing off into the sunset. And that's also sailing off into the sunset, also, you know, the high noon. It all goes together. Sailing off at high noon on your airship. Obviously, I didn't want the pirate flag, so I was fiddling around like, what can I do? I ended up just removing it, and I didn't need to replace anything. I was trying to put something in its place, but I was like, you know what? This is too much fiddling. So I basically, I didn't build anything on this airship, so I can't take any credit for this. I did hodgepodge two together. I also removed all these VFX, other than just like a little bit of burning and smoke, because there's too many VFX going on there. There's cannons being shot. But the two of them work together quite nicely. So the bottom of Purple Skin's airship and the top of Rohana, basically the balloon part. And now I got this nice dainty size of an airship. So as you can see now as a composition, you have the kind of protruding front, the kind of different facade shapes of the Western style pieces out front with the flat roof out back, but the flatness of the roof gets offset by the coaster going in between it or above it and the airship behind that. So now we have layers, but the silhouette's a little bit hard to see. And I knew going into this, when I built that silhouette, I had the idea of putting a sun behind it to make it pop, because you'll see the silhouette much better if it's on a color. And I did this kind of with that whirlywig I made a long time ago. I did like a big water splash, and I was like, I'll just do the same thing I did there, but instead of a water splash, I'll build a basic shape sun, and that'll give us the symbology of the sun being out at high noon and our character tipping their hat in front of it. And then the sun will bring a lot of color. You know, we are in the Red Rock area of the park. We are in the western area, so having that bright orange, those bright yellows, will really bring a lot of color with a nice brownish red backdrop behind it. So you have this beautiful gradient between yellow to light orange to a darker orange, and then a red rock behind all of that. So that's how I was able to kind of bring my plankification with a pop of color. But then I also have my Kirby, which is a bright pink. And then I'm thinking, like, what other things can I do with color? I'll figure that out later. This green that we're seeing here, this pale green, that's not the intention that I was going for. It's just a temporary placeholder, knowing that I can recolor it later. And I wasn't sure what that would become, and I wasn't sure if I was going to replace the walls with, you know, something a little bit more panely, something more wooden, because we got all these rich wooden buildings around, and I like the contrast of some of them. Some of them have light wood with dark brown balconies. Batches in particular has a lot of variance between the color pops of the wood. So how can I incorporate some of those concepts into this build so it has that woody feel, but then offset it with some color? And that was a bit of a challenge for me. You'll see later, how do I incorporate the color? And for now, the challenge is, how do I build this shape? Because I had this weird protrusion here that was part of my volume cube that I'm supposed to build on, and it's crooked. The path comes in at an angle, so I can't really use the wall pieces, the standard wall pieces. I need something that I can rotate in any direction. So I went with those scaffold wood pieces. They're extra thin too, but that also proposed me some issues, as you can see on the inside, because it created some gaps. So I'm just finagling things around, trying to figure out, like, how do I close these gaps off? Like, I just want to get the wood in and then, like, clean it up later with trim, right? And we can, you know, we can woodify the crap out of it. Like I said, all of this is subject to change, and that's why, like, I'm not married to any of this. I got the front facade looking kind of good. I made this tower, still unsure about it. But the tower on its own looked a little bit weird, and I knew I wanted to do some sort of an airship or a blimp or a balloon. And so now that I have that in, the tower on the left doesn't look as weird. So I'm just, like, trying to get my basics in, right? So the fundamentals of the building, we got the shed on the right, which you come up into. It's on an angle, it's twisted, it protrudes. So we kind of built something in. It's not pretty, it's definitely dirty, it's definitely rugged, messy, but it's walled in, it's walled off, and I figure we can decorate it later, we can trim it, we can put all the stuff on and clean it up and make it look pretty. So as a box shape, as a building, does this work? So I'm just cleaning up the walls, fitting everything in, and trying to assess if I like the shape or not. And while it is pretty flat on top, a lot of Western buildings are flat, but then I figure we add railings, we add a balcony, we add props, windows, doors, that sort of thing. And even to this day, even till this point of me being done, I kind of now want to go back when I actually put it into the park and string a bunch of ropes from the ship down to the top of the balcony and bolt them in. So, like, tie the ship down onto the top of the roof. And I think that will be, like, the last thing I do that I didn't do in this recording, just to kind of, as a final bit of polish, just so, you know, it shows that the airship is tied to the top of the roof. So it's almost like this building serves as a port. So that was the concept there with the airship and all that. Because we have this tower on the left and it protrudes out a little bit, I thought to myself, I can make a balcony off this. And I did want a balcony originally, but with the way I did the legs and the high noon and I had to, like, separate the roofs, I was like, how am I even going to get a balcony in here? And that's how. I used just the balcony on the tower, and then I can fit my Kirby on there as well, and it offsets things because we have the Zaphor character on the right, the high noon character in the middle, the Kirby on the left, and they're all at different heights. So it creates for a pretty decent composition. So now I'm just tossing in some railings, trying to get the top of this build to be less flat and have a little bit more detail, a little bit more pop to it. We also added our columns around all the sides, and just to give it a little bit more girth and edge work. And then I got sidetracked. I was like, okay, I kind of just want to build this now, and because I was struggling with, like, all the, like, the polish, and I was like, well, one thing I am happy about is the airship. So why not, like, just incorporate the airship? So because the roof is so flat and it needs a little bit of detail, it needs something to draw your attention to it, I thought, like, you know, I'm struggling with the roof and I'm building the railings. So before I finish the railings, let me build some sort of contraption that is like a walkway that leads you to the airship, right? And that way it'll create more noise on my roof, and I'll know where my pathway sits for it, and then I can work around it after. And maybe that'll help make the composition of the top look a little bit better. So here I'm just using like wood and wood scaffold and roped wood and all of those pieces of the kit to create some hodgepodgey ropey scaffold that, you know, ties together and leads you up to the airship. So rather than the port being actually on the building, there's a cliff right there. So it's like a perfect place for me to do that, but you access it through the High Noon building. You go in, you go up the tower, and you climb up, you go onto the roof, and then you climb across the bridge and climb up the ladder and get on the airship. So I wanted it to be logical, make some sense, I guess. Although I did forget to put a doorway downstairs, and I'm thinking about that now. How do you get into the tower? So I got to go back and add a doorway when we go to the episode and actually place this in. And I want to add ropes to tie it to the top of the ship. So it's like, yeah, the ship is the access point to the airship dock, but you also tie the ship down to the building afterwards, after it docks. So that would be like the last thing I want to do as a final detail. But this was kind of fun, like working with all this like ropey woody stuff, crazy contraption, and you know, I don't know if it makes sense or not, but it looks like it does. So I was happy and I moved on. And now that it's in and I know where the pathway leads to, I can follow my balconies all the way to the rope bridge, close it off, and now I have my, you know, exiting area, and I don't really have to worry about changing any of that later. I did use these wooden posts to clean up my railings, and then I found a different one later. It's so hard sifting through these pieces sometimes because like they're not named the same, and especially when you're not familiar with them, and there's so many different types of wood. But there are like actual railings that are intended to be used as corner caps for that. They're just labeled completely differently. I ended up finding them later, so I do swap it out. So with the boarding station here, I didn't want just the plain boarding station, so we're gonna make a balcony. And I'm gonna do this hard oak, this dark oak, and Batch used this on their building next to me, and I really like the way that looked. It has this nice contrast, it pops a little bit, so we're going with that. And I'm just sticking with the railings that I have now. They're recolorable, and I figure I can alternate. There's the post that I was looking for. It actually is green by default and everything. I think it's intended to go with those, but they're in a completely different area. So I'm going back to my Western pieces, seeing like, what do I have here? Like, and I was looking at Batch's stuff too. I was like, I'll steal that piece. And he already had it like pre-colored and stuff. I didn't like the way that the trim looked on some of this. It looks like kind of like unfinished. And I know there's like a proper trim cap for these, but then there would have been an overhang, and I didn't know how I felt about that. So I just like made my own overhang, or made my own cap, made my own trim. And I just figured that would be the way to go. So originally I was going to do like a boarded roof with those custom board pieces. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think these tiles, these shingles actually look quite okay. And I was a little bit worried about having too much woody textures. So the tiles on this one kind of break it apart a little bit. So I was happy with that. I think I just needed to clean it up, add some posts, add some trim, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I did there. And I was like, okay, like I kind of have like a balcony. I think it's kind of neat that it's like split down the middle. I wanted to add a water tower originally to the build. And then I was like, oh, now that I have the airship there and the tower, it's too much. So I put it off to the side because when the coaster comes behind the building, it's going to pass by the water tower. That water tower in particular was blue, and specifically like a Dex R blue. And I knew I have all these recolorable wood panels. I wanted to incorporate blue somewhere. And, you know, because we have Dex R. Dex R is Zaphor's blue. And it's kind of like a grayish sky blue. And the water tower is kind of like a bit of a vibrant blue, similar to that. Same kind of not saturation, but hue. And yeah, I was just like, okay, I will I will put the blue water tower in to add some blue to the back. You can see it through the coaster a little bit. And later on, I'll find a place to incorporate blue on the front. I didn't want to go too crazy with the blue, but I had an idea that the blue would work kind of nicely on the high noon. And I was just kind of hoping that would work. So I'm just trying to cap off all these pillars. I didn't know what was the right choice for it. I couldn't seem to find an actual official pillar cap, so I just built my own. Putting some wooden trim around the sides, trying to create a little bit more noise, a little bit of a lip around the building. Even though we don't really see the back, you will see it when you ride on the coaster. So I wanted at least something like a little bit of trim, a couple windows, a water tower, so that when the coaster's ripping through there, it's not just like, oh, look at that flat wall. Right? So I'm just woodifying everything at this point. More trim, more trim, more trim. As I can, looking around at all the other Western builds and seeing the ones that we've placed in the episodes so far, everybody's done a great job at just layering trim and offsetting the colors. And I knew, like, if my building was going to pop, I needed to do the same thing. So, you know, shout out to all the other Western builders. I was able to use your builds as reference, learn a little bit from what was making them look nice, and incorporate some of that into this. Just the different variants of pop and trim and undulation to separate things from looking too flat, and just try to take that stuff and effectively spam it everywhere. I was looking at the different windows that you guys used. Originally, I liked the ones that Batch used, but then I was like, you know what? These ones with the blinders look kind of good. I don't know if I changed the color on them now that I think of it. I might have to go back. I might have forgotten to actually change the color. It might still be green. So that'll be like, I didn't step away from this build. I just went 9 hours straight, and other than like a quick snack break. So sometimes when you step away and you come back, you're like, oh, I didn't do that. And for me, that is starting this speed build. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't do that. There's also a pillar I forgot to color. I found that at the end when I did the B-roll. So little things here and there. So I'll just take another closer look at it when we actually get it in the park and see if there's any final doodads I wanted to change. I want to put like a sign up here. One of the ones with the fun arch. Howdy. That I might want to recolor. I left it red, but I think red works, especially because I got that yellow, orange, dark orange, and then we have like the red font. So I wasn't mad at it. I think it doesn't need to be changed, but it could be pink. Like it could be a number of things really, but I thought the red worked. And even though we don't really use a lot of red in this build, other than like Miss Ellie, the red seemed fine to me, so I didn't see any need to change it. But maybe I could go a little bit more like cherry, so it matches like the colors on I want to call it Zaphor, Kirby. Yeah, and that might work, but I like the howdy at the top there because it's like tipping the hat and it says howdy. So like, again, always just trying to look for elements that make it PlanCofied, I guess, or Zaphorified, high noonified. Those are the elements that I'm working with, though. It's Miss Ellie, it's a quick draw, it's high noon, it's Kirby, it's Zaphor, and then the symbology of the airship for flying away and all that. So I jump cut the recordings there just to put all these Western props out front because I want to see what kind of decorations I could work with, and I didn't want to record myself placing them down one by one. And so I was like, I got the decorations out, I got an idea what I want to do with them, but before I start decorating, it's probably a good idea to figure out my colors, my color palette, because if I have all these like knickknacks and things like on there, it might start getting difficult to actually select the building to recolor. So I'm trying to figure out the colors. Originally I went with like this baby blue Dexar color, and I thought that looked okay, but there was something bothering me about it. I wasn't quite happy with it. later on, I changed it to be a little bit more like the water tower, a little bit more on the sky blue grayish side, less on that, yeah, that cyan. Because there's something a little bit off about that paint color, specifically for like Western. I just don't, I don't know. It was bothering me. So I was just fiddling around with things, and I've went back and forth on these drapes for a while, and you'll see that here. And I really should just group them. I mean, it's yeah, the long drapes and the curved drapes can't be recolored at the same time, so even grouping them, I'd still have to recolor them twice. But I was doing things the long hard way for sure. But that's just because I was like, I'm gonna be happy with this, and then I was like, no, let me change it. And then I'm like, I'll be happy with this new change. And then I was like, no, and I just couldn't quite get my finger on it. And the orange was bothering me, but later on, we went back to the yellow-orange gradient to go with the sun. It just needed the surrounding colors first before I could actually see how that looked. So we went through a lot of different changes with the color, but I didn't want to go too crazy with the colors. That's why I went with this like lightish brown with the dark brown trim. So it has that like monotone Western kind of vibe to it. But then I wanted like a few poppy colors, but not like oversaturated colors either, because like there's probably not a lot of paint or dye in the Western era, so we want to, you know, make it look a little worn and that sort of thing. So the blue banners, the blue drapes were just too much blue. It was like overwhelming blue, and I didn't feel like blue should have been the like the blue represented the sky, right? And you know, that's not the focal point here. The focal point is high noon, the sun. And that's why I just went back and forth on it. I just thought, because if the building's brown and the colors that goes into brown is actually like a desaturated, darkened orange, and that is brown. Brown is like a reddish orange. Then if the whole building's generally orange, or different variations of it to make brown, adding some blue would contrast that. It contrasted it too much. So I was like, okay, maybe I was like, okay, I'll try the pink to add a little bit more of that Kirby in. And I kind of liked it, to be honest, but the Kirby blends kind of well. Like, he's not prominent enough for it to all tie together. So I was like, and I ultimately just went back to orange, and I thought, you know what? This will probably work, especially once I figure out all the colors around it. And I changed that tower front panel to be a little bit more on the orangey side. Not like super saturated orange, but like a painty orange, a brownish orange. And I felt like now the colors should work. I may go back and tone down that banner just a little bit, like desaturated a little bit. It's a little on the bright side, but I liked some brightness, because we got the big sun, the silhouette, and I want your eyes to be drawn to it. Just like, maybe I overkilled it. So I'll see what I feel like when I sleep on it. Take my eyes. I've been looking at this thing for like 10 hours, so after I sleep on it, come back, I'll know right away whether it's too bright or not, and I could just tone it down really quickly. But overall, the color pops are nice, and there's not too many of them. It's not like crazy. So now I'm just trying to add some doodads to the top to bring the composition together. I stuffed a tree into a keg barrel, and I thought that looked kind of fun. And then we popped Dexar off at the top, waving at people, and that is a symbology of our beloved Zafor, as Zafor's character on Discord was Dexar, and my character on Discord is Chief Beef. So I kind of put us together, like kind of like hanging out, and put us on the inside in the queue. So it's me and Zafor hanging out. As I said, this is my tribute to Zafor, and this is Zafor's final coaster. So I put the two buddies together forever inside of High Noon. Yeah, I just thought that might be kind of cute. Putting some random props. Shout out to Batch for having all these assorted props out front that I could literally just copy paste. So it's like I don't know what order I want to put these boxes in. I'll just take these ones. You're not really going up there, so I just wanted something, you know, some noise. So not a lot of options for Western lanterns. So we went with these ones, and there's these ones. I think they're part of the spooky pack. So whatever. They look like they work here. And yeah, I just wanted to get a little bit of lighting in here. I'm trying to play with the spotlight because I want that silhouette to pop. And depending on the angle of a spotlight, I can actually shine light on it, so the silhouette actually pops. It's just, I was like, do I want to color it? And I decided to just tone it down a light gray, and that way it shines a light on the legs and on the sign. And then I was like, how do I make Miss Ellie pop a little bit? And so we just put like a small little area light between, and now you can see both the characters quite good from the front at night. And you know, just adding our lighting. And I think, I don't know if I actually recorded this. It might be cut. Oh, no, I'm doing it here. Perfect. I was going to say I lit the sun because I was like, oh, how dare you, Johnny? It's like the best part to actually light and make look cool. Look at that. It has this beautiful glow to it now. Yes. If there's anything to add a light to it, would be that. So that turned out really great, actually. I like the look of the sun during the nighttime. I must be coming to the end of my recording. I'm looking at it, it's like I must be close because I'm doing the memorial yard now. This was my original plot. This was what I was supposed to be building, but it was just, you know, wasn't enough. But now that I did the boarding station and I added all my tributes, I love this little sunflower. I wanted to represent the growth of life, that Zephyr remains have sprouted a sunflower, and Zephyr is now a sunflower. So he's still watching over us. He's still in the park, and he's blossomed into new life. When life ends, life begins. It's the cycle. So here I was trying to look for cherry blossoms. Shout out to Kiara. I asked in Discord, and she mentioned it was the rose plants that are recolored, but you can make cherry. I wanted to do cherry blossom trees. Zephyr loved cherry blossom trees. And yeah, so I rest in peace, Zephyr. I was trying to think what I could do. I didn't want to go crazy with this. Like I said, I've already incorporated him into the station. Kirby's in the station. I did all that. DXR's in the station. So I just want something, just a nice burial site, a nice memorial site. I went with the pink flowers to represent Kirby, put some little daisies around it. And then I was like, just trying to look through what else I could do, put a little bit of ivy on there, a potted plant. The potted plant is a gift from me, that right there. I grow these little plants like similar to this, these little ferns in my apartment. So I wanted to grow one for Zephyr. And then I had this idea that I would do like a podium and put Zephyr, like make a statue of Zephyr. So we immortalize him as a statue, built him a stone statue of himself by his grave with all the pink flowers. So I just take this character and make him white. And then I, for this back area, I didn't really want to do much, so I did the same thing. I take the Zephyr character with the Kirby. I actually like the original positioning of it because it ties my composition all together. And then I'm just going to cover it with rocks. And I'm assuming I'm at the end of my speed build, so that's everything, guys. And I'll just let you guys enjoy the B-roll from here, and you guys can let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this high noon build. Did I plankify it? What do you guys think of it? And again, once again, apologies to Kiara for kind of jumping on this and redoing your station, but I really wanted to, you know, do something for Zephyr myself, and wanted to build something for what he created and do my part to give back. So We did some pink smoke here and some confetti, please, Jerry. I'll put a trigger on the coaster when it goes up. And that's pretty much my last final touch, I think. So that'll be my speed build. You guys, that is my build. I'll show you what the B-roll looks like. And then when we go over to doing this episode of Western, in the next episode of Project PlanCo, we'll be putting this in with the other builds, the park entrance and all that. Okay, here's the B-roll. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye now.
Our futures bound, our bodies know. Your blood like wine, I want it in. Oh, darling, get me drunk, invite me. It's not my fault, I'm not to blame. These ain't my sins, I broke my chains. There's more to do if I can only leave. I can't go yet, don't let me die. I'll never stop until I'm done. But just tonight.